We are talking league winners in fantasy football this season. I think league winners get it's such a corny term at this point in the fantasy football space, but these are genuinely players who I think are going to dominate this season. 10 guys that we're going to look back at the end of the year and be like, why were we not drafting them earlier? Starting with the personal favorite, Emeka Egbuka, Tampa Bay's rookie receiver, who is just one of my favorite picks in all of fantasy drafts this year. I don't understand how people are not more all in on him. It's so evident that he's going to break out in year one. He was really good his final year at OSU, 81 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Tampa Bay spent a round one pick to get him, and all the buzz coming out of camp, everything we've seen on Twitter, his preseason game where he had that nice reception and then they pulled him shortly after. Like, this guy is so good. I don't really care about Chris Godwin or Mike Evans at this point. Bet on talent. Draft talented players. Don't worry about situations. We see this time and time again. We avoid drafting a really good player because of the depth chart or the offense or the coach or the quarterback. And talent always wins out. Look at Malik Neighbors last year. A lot of people didn't want to draft him because of Daniel Jones being on the Giants. It didn't matter. He was still a top 10 fantasy receiver. And I think that could possibly be the case for Egbuka this year. Yes, he's the wide receiver 3 on the depth chart, but that's not going to last very long. Chris Godwin coming off that gruesome ankle injury. It was reported that he had to have a second surgery this spring on that ankle. There's a strong chance that Godwin starts the year slow, isn't even playing the first couple of weeks, which means Emeka is going to get a ton of run early on in the year. And then when Godwin comes back or starts to round into form, Tampa Bay is not going to be able to take him off the field. He's going to play all over the formation for the Bucs. And then Mike Evans, nearly 32 years old, has had a hamstring injury. It feels like every single year for the past 4 years, he's always injured. And while Evans did look great last year, he's a guy who could just fall off this year. 32 years old is old. Father time comes for everyone. We know Liam Cohen is no longer the offensive coordinator. Josh Grizzard takes over as that role. He was promoted within, so he knows the system. He was a big part of what they did last year. Tampa Bay was one of the best offenses in football. They were 3rd in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdowns. Baker Mayfield had a career year. Tampa Bay loves Egbuka. Baker Mayfield loves Egbuka. Mike Evans, everyone has been gushing about this receiver, praising his ability to play all over the formation. This isn't just a slot receiver. This is a guy that you can draft as your wide receiver 3 in round 8, in round 9. His ADP is probably going to get pushed up the closer we get to September, but still, he's going to be heavily involved early and often. Even if Godwin plays in week 1, Emeka is going to have a role. I think he could have a similar type of year from what we saw from Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, who got really hot to close out the season. This is a guy who has immense upside, especially for the price tag, for his cost. I think he is going to have an incredible year. Again, this is a really good Tampa Bay offense. Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback. This is a good offensive line. There's no reason to think Egbuka could not drastically outperform his ADP. Moving on to our next guy, Jordan Mason, another guy that really seems to be flying under the radar. I love Mason this year. I think he could be one of those guys we look back on and you'll just be so happy that you drafted him. He's just a really good player in a really good situation. From weeks 1 to 5 last year, he was the RB6 in total fantasy points, 3 100-yard games, 2 top 5 finishes, 5.1 yards per carry, averaging 16.6 fantasy points per game. And he was also really efficient with his touches. So it wasn't a guy that was just surviving on volume. No, he did a lot with the little. He was 2nd in explosive run rate, 2nd in yards after contact per attempt, 5th in missed tackles forced per attempt. We know he ended up suffering that shoulder injury and then an ankle injury, ended his season. But in those 6 healthy games that he played, he was a workhorse. 21 touches. He averaged along with 111 total yards. He's a bell cow running back. He's a bigger back that can handle a big workload. And yeah, he's on Minnesota now. We know Aaron Jones is still on the roster. He's a nice player, but he's declining as well. He's 31 years old. And last year, his advanced metrics weren't great. 27th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 11th in yards after contact per attempt. Not terrible. But then 27th in explosive run rate. And the word coming out of camp, everything that we've heard from Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell is that it's going to be a 50-50 timeshare. 1A, 1B as he's described it. I think Mason is going to get a lot of the goal line work because he is the bigger back. He is the better back at this point. He's really good on an elite Minnesota offense. I like everything that we've seen from J.J. McCarthy. They're not going to be able to key in on the run with the receiving threats that they have. Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. This is also a strong offensive line. That's important. When you're drafting a running back, offensive line obviously matters. And this is a guy you can draft in round 9. In round 9, who could be an RB1, who is top 12 upside, top 15 upside. If anything were to ever happen to Aaron Jones, who's proved to us time and time again that he can't stay healthy. He's always seeming to deal with something. And at 31 years old, injuries happen a lot more frequently. So sign me up for a player with this type of upside that you can get late in drafts. I think he's an absolute steal that a lot of people aren't talking about. All right, moving on to our next guy. We're flying through this list. If you are enjoying this type of content, if you could please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me grow. I want to get this video out to more people like you and me who love fantasy football. And if you want to be a part of it, I'd really appreciate you. All right, next guy. George Pickens is going to go absolutely crazy this year. This is finally the year that we've all been waiting for. He's in such a perfect situation now in Dallas with major upgrades across the board at quarterback, offensive coordinator. The overall nature of this offense is so much better than anything that he's ever come close to having in Pittsburgh under Arthur Smith, who's just not a good offensive coordinator. We know they like to run the football. The Steelers ranked 29th in pass attempts last year. Dallas ranked 3rd. And that was even with Cooper Rush playing 12 games. They want to throw the football. And since 2022, the Cowboys are top 10 in total points, plays, pace, no huddle rate, neutral pass rate, and passing yards. I think this offense, Brian Schottenheimer was offensive coordinator, now is a head coach. They're going to be a pass-happy team. Who do they have at running back? We like Jaden Blue as a nice sleeper, but Javonte Williams, they're going to rely on the pass. And Dak Prescott has proven to us in the past that he can support 2 fantasy-relevant receivers. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup in 2019, Lamb and Cooper in 2020. I also like Dak as an amazing value pick in fantasy. Remember, he was a quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game in 2023. I think Prescott has a monster season. I love stacking Prescott with I love stacking Prescott with Lamb or Prescott with Pickens. This offense reminds me of what we saw from Cincinnati last year. I think they are going to have a ginormous season. Pickens has never been a bad receiver. It's just been his usage, his situation, but he did take notable strides in his route running last year, according to Reception Perception. 72.8% success rate versus man, 77.6% success rate versus press, which is the 83rd percentile. Both of those marks were career best. I bet my house, my life savings account, that George scores double-digit touchdowns this year, along with setting career highs in receptions and yards. I think he's going to be one of the biggest breakouts in fantasy football this season. This is a guy who's so easy to click on in round 4, early parts of round 5. I love Pickens this year because last year in Pittsburgh, it was a usage problem. It was an Arthur Smith problem. It was a quarterback problem. All those issues have been erased in Dallas. Yes, he's the number 2 option in the passing game, but I like that. I like that Lamb is going to get the attention. It's going to put Pickens in really good spots, and he's going to have a career year. All right, moving on to our next guy, Tyler Warren, tight end for the Indianapolis Colts, who looked really good in his first preseason game, 14th overall pick. Absolute physical specimen. This dude is huge, 6'5", 256 pounds, and he can move for being that big. He's an athletic freak, and he broke out in his final season at Penn State. 104 receptions, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he had 4 rushing scores, along with 218 rushing yards. So 12 total touchdowns, and he broke the college single-season yardage record by a tight end from a power conference with 1,400 total yards, which was previously owned by none other than Mr. Brock Bowers, had that record before. And Warren absolutely shattered it. This is also a guy who has very reliable hands, which is extremely impressive for a guy his size. He had a 2.8% drop rate on 135 targets last year, 61.9% contested catch rate. He's a monster after the catch as well, as you can imagine. 30 missed tackles forced in 2024. He's going to be the staple of this Colts offense. I think he's going to be the engine of this offense. Yes, there's question marks at quarterback. Anthony Richardson hasn't looked very good, we know. Always seems to be hurt. And then it's Daniel Jones, who I think I would prefer Daniel Jones to be the starting quarterback at this point. Feels weird to say, but I don't think Daniel Jones is as bad of a quarterback as people think he is. Target competition, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman Jr., nothing crazy. And this situation reminds me so much of Brock Bowers last year. We didn't want to draft Bowers because of Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. He was on a bad Raiders offense. Devontae Adams was there. It just felt gross. Even though he was so talented, we didn't want any part of it. And what happened? Bowers was the tight end one. It wouldn't shock me if Warren was a top 5 tight end at the position. I still believe in Shane Steichen as a play caller. I think he's one of the better offensive-minded coaches, and he's going to use Warren in creative ways. I think it's the perfect fit for Steichen's RPO-heavy scheme, and he's going to scheme up easy looks for Warren, get the big man in space. And we also saw him taking snaps as fullback in practice. I believe it was last week. So if you add in rushing upside as well, like a little Taysom Hill-esque, on top of what he's going to get in the receiving game, he'll instantly be a top 5 tight end in fantasy this year. And another little nugget for you that I thought was really interesting was Warren was an all-state quarterback in high school. He didn't play a single snap at tight end until he got to Penn State. Guess who else was a high school quarterback? None other than Travis Kelce. So I'm not saying he's the next Kelce, but I'm just saying that guys who go from quarterback to receiver or tight end absolutely have an advantage. They know how to feel for coverages. Like Kelce always knew where to sit down in zone or where to stop his route. He had a feel for it because he played quarterback. He thought like a quarterback while playing tight end. I think that's a huge advantage. I think Warren is going to do the same thing. He's tight end 9 right now, 116th overall, round 12 guy. If you don't want to draft Bowers or Kittle or pay up for McBride, I think he is an incredible pick at that spot. On to our next guy. We got a lot to go here, so grab your coffee, grab an energy drink. We got 10 guys. We're about halfway through, so keep trucking through with me. All right, next guy, Chuba Hubbard, who was quietly really good last year, RB13 in fantasy points per game, 11th in explosive run rate, 7th in yards after contact per attempt. He got it done. A lot of people didn't expect this, right? We're all like, Jonathan Brooks, when is Brooks coming back? And no, it was a Chuba Hubbard show all year long, and that was all on a really bad Carolina offense that ranked 29th in yards per game, 24th in yards per play, 21st in red zone scoring attempts per game. This offense was horrible, and Hubbard still thrived. It helped that he saw top 5 usage at the position in a ton of categories. He was 3rd in snap share, 4th in opportunity share. He saw 88% of Carolina's rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. I don't see why any of those numbers would change this year. We know they brought in Rico Dowdle. They have Travis Etienne's brother, rookie running back. So no major threats, no major changes in my opinion. And this Carolina offense, the arrow is pointing up. Bryce Young is starting to look like the first overall pick. He's looked good in camp. He's looked good in preseason. He looked good at the end of last year. He really flashed over those final 3 games where he had 10 total touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I like Dave Canales as a play caller. He knows how to develop quarterbacks. This is a really good offensive line that ranked 7th in run blocking last year. It's the perfect storm for Hubbard. He's not a flashy pick. Maybe you don't get super excited to click on his name, but he's going to get it done, and I think he has immense upside on this offense. That's going to be in scoring position more. That's going to be able to move the football a little bit better than they did last year, or much better, with Tet McMillan, wide receiver who they spent the 8th overall pick on, who's looked really good so far. He's going to help this offense sustain drives, move the football. And Chuba is also going to be involved in the passing game. He earned 54 targets last year. He's going to continue to see that pass down work. Rico Dowdle is not a pass down back. ETN is a rookie. While he can flourish in that role, I just don't see it happening in year 1. Hubbard is a workhorse back on an offense that could be above average this year that you can draft in round 5. So if you'd like to start your drafts wide receiver heavy, which we'll talk about in future videos, some some really smart draft strategies, then Hubbard is a guy you can get in round 5, round 6, maybe in your home league, and you can start your draft with 2 elite receivers and then maybe grab some guys at the 1Z positions at quarterback or tight end. Like, he's one of those guys that could be a staple on your championship roster this year. Moving on to our next guy, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who's one of the biggest breakouts in fantasy last year. He was so good. From weeks 9 to 16, wide receiver 2 in fantasy, only behind Jamar Chase. Think about that. Wide receiver 2. That's incredible. Averaging 21.8 fantasy points per game. A lot of people are fading JSN this year because of Sam Darnold maybe, or Cooper Kupp is going to take away all the slot work. It's going to be a mistake if you fade JSN in fantasy this year, and let me tell you why. JSN is a very versatile receiver that's going to thrive in this new-look Seattle offense led by offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. Yes, JSN saw the most snaps out of any receivers last year out of the slot, but he's much more than just a slot receiver, and the numbers, the data back it up. He's a guy who can line up all over the field, and he's being utilized that way so far in camp. I think that Seattle has a much bigger role planned for Jackson this season that could send him into another stratosphere in fantasy this year. This is a guy who can absolutely win on the outside. He led all receivers with a 4.56 yards per route run versus man coverage from week 10 on last year. So he's not just a slot guy, this little dink and dunk guy. No, he can win on the outside, and he proved that to us at Ohio State, where he had that monster year with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave as teammates, 75% success rate versus man coverage. He should eat in this new flanker role, in this new offense. Sam Darnold might be better than Geno Smith, right? Like, Sam Darnold had an incredible year for Minnesota. Yes, he was throwing to Jefferson. He was in a really friendly offense, and Kevin O'Connell is a really good play caller, but I think that Darnold is more than just the system, right? I think he could be better than Geno Smith. And JSN has no competition for targets outside of an old, washed, injury-prone Cooper Kupp. Like, I like Cooper Kupp as a player, but he's just not the same guy anymore. And even if Kupp is primarily in the slot, I don't think it matters for JSN. On 11 targets last year that JSN saw, that was 15-plus air yards. His catch rate and yards per catch were both well above the league average. Granted, we didn't see Jackson in that outside deep threat role because they had DK Metcalf. Who did they have this year? Jake Bobo, right? Like, he's going to be using the slot. He's going to be using the outside. I really like Kubiak as an offensive coordinator. I really like Darnold as a quarterback who fits this system perfectly. They're going to use a lot of play action. Yes, they're going to want to run the football, but that doesn't mean that just because Kubiak is a run-focused offensive coordinator that JSN is just going to fall off. No, when they throw the football, it's going to be through JSN. I think that it's an upgrade for Jackson this year. Potentially a better quarterback. Could be a better offense, and with minimal target competition, I don't see why people are not all in on JSN. I don't think he's even hit his ceiling yet. I think he's one of the best picks you can make in round 3 that is top 12 upside at the position. It would not shock me if he finished top 5. He's that good. Bet on talented players and don't be so concerned about quarterbacks. Like, Sam Darnold is not a bad quarterback. I don't think last year was a fluke at all. If you're still sticking with me, I really appreciate you guys. Remember, please like this video. I have 150 likes goal. I think we can make that. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. We're going to really start to be firing off a ton of content, and I want you guys here with me. Let's win some championships this year. All right, next guy, Travion Henderson. He could be the best rookie running back in all of fantasy this year, not counting Ashton Genty, obviously. I think everything that we've seen from him, especially his most recent preseason game, how can you not be excited? He was really good in Ohio State. The Patriots spent second-round pick to get him. He's an explosive back that is strong in pass protection. He's a threat in the receiving game. He's really explosive. He doesn't fumble. Over 650 career touches. He didn't fumble once. He has all the traits for a running back to get on the field immediately. Ramondre Stevenson has a fumbling problem. He fumbled 7 times last year. He's just an inefficient back. Like, there's absolutely a world where Henderson takes this RB1 spot as early as week 1. It would not shock me at all. And Josh McDaniels, we know, back as offensive coordinator for the Patriots. It's going to be hard to take Henderson off the football field because of his everything that we just talked about. He's a guy that's great in pass protection. He'll be a safety blanket for Drake May. He's got insane speed and explosiveness, something that this New England offense desperately needs. They need playmakers. Stevenson, Ramondre is not that. We know this offense will be led by Josh McDaniels, who returns as offensive coordinator. And I think in this offense, Henderson fits it perfectly to a T. Everything we're hearing out of camp is Henderson looks like the RB1. He's a stud. He has breakaway speed and elusiveness. And his metrics, his numbers, his final year at Ohio State were incredible. He led all running backs with 7.2 yards per carry. He had the highest explosive run rate ahead of Ashton Genty, and he was second in yards after contact per attempt behind only Genty. This is a really good, talented back. He's a do-it-all type of player. He's a home run threat. I also think this New England offense takes a huge step. Drake May is going to be much better in year 2. I loved everything we saw from May last year. I'm expecting him to be even better this year. This offensive line is hopefully been fixed. We know they spent the 4th overall pick on Will Campbell, who's an absolute monster to help bolster this unit. They brought in some veterans as well. I think Henderson is a guy who you can draft in round 6, who's absolutely going to outperform his ADP. I think he has league winner written all over him. Again, another player. If you like to wait on running back, Henderson needs to be your number 1 target. He has the mold. He has everything set up for him to thrive in year 1 because of a lot of it is because of his pass protection, his ability as a receiver, and his explosiveness. Those are things that this New England offense desperately needs. Why would they not want to put a running back on the field that can protect their franchise quarterback? He's going to get on the field immediately, and I think he's going to earn a bigger and bigger role as the weeks go on. On to our next guy, Bo Nix. I think he's my number 1 quarterback target in fantasy drafts this year if you don't want to spend up for the top tier guys. He was really good from week 5 on. He was a quarterback 6 in fantasy, averaging 21.4 fantasy points per game. I was only behind Lamar, Burrow, Allen, Baker, and Hurts. He was also averaging 2.2 touchdowns per game. He had 300-plus yard performances. And what makes him so valuable in fantasy is his rushing ability. He had 92 attempts, 430 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was also 8th in rushing yards among quarterbacks. He performed really well in his rookie year. It didn't take him very long to figure it out. He had his first couple games were a little rough, but once he got going, it really clicked in the Sean Payton offense. And he did all of this on an offense that didn't really have much. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, that was it. And we know the talent that they've brought in this offseason. Evan Ingram, tight end, comes over from Jacksonville. Really nice player. J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, the rookie running back, Pat Bryant, the rookie receiver. They've just surrounded him with much more talent, which means probably more fantasy points. He's going to have a lot more options in the passing game. It's going to lead to Nix having an even better year. I'm predicting that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy this year. I don't think that's shocking at all. He had 33 touchdowns. He had 33 total touchdowns in year 1. I think he has 45-plus touchdown upside in year 2. I think that's well within the range of outcomes for Nix. I think he's a really talented player in a really good offense, surrounded by a ton of weapons. He kind of reminds me of that Jaden Daniels. Granted, Jaden Daniels was a rookie. We know Nix isn't, but a guy who's being drafted later that is going to outperform his ADP. I really like Bo this year. I think he could be the quarterback 1 in fantasy. I think he's that good. I think his situation is much improved this year. Really excited to get him on as many fantasy rosters as possible. On to our next guy, Rashee Rice, who was on his way to breaking fantasy last year. It's a small sample size, but he was the wide receiver 2 through the first 3 weeks, averaging 21.6 fantasy points per game, 26% target share. He out-targeted Travis Kelce 29-12 over that stretch. We know he suffered that gruesome knee injury in week 4. He appears to be fully healthy. The downside is he's going to get suspended. We don't know how long. Could be 4 games, could be 6 games, but I don't really care that much. If it's 4 games, I don't mind it. He's too good to pass up on. Rashee Rice is a really talented player. He actually ranked 5th in yards per route run over his last 2 seasons, and that's even if you removed all the screen passes, according to Jacob Gibbs on Twitter. He's not just a screen merchant. They use him downfield as well. He's the #1 target for Mahomes on this pass-happy Kansas City offense, which ranked 6th in pass rate last year. And if the 3-game sample size isn't enough for you, in Rice's 11 games since seeing a full-time role, including the playoffs, he averaged 17.9 fantasy points per game, which would equate to a top 10 finish at the position. I think Rice is absolutely worth his round 4. You could probably get him in round 4, maybe even round 5 in your home league, depending on what his suspension is. But once he steps onto the football field, once he serves that suspension, he's instantly a top 10 fantasy receiver this year. I don't mind. Like, obviously, if the suspension's 8 games, right? This is a different story. But 4, 5, 6, I'm hoping it's closer to 4. But Rice is really good, attached to Patrick Mahomes with an aging Travis Kelce. Xavier Worthy's a very overrated receiver, and Hollywood Brown is a nice deep threat that's going to actually open up the field for Rashee. So I think it's the perfect storm for Rice this year outside of the suspension. And on to our final guy, Brian Robinson Jr., who is a guy that has double-digit touchdown upside on a really good Commanders offense led by Jaden Daniels. From weeks 1 to 5 last year, a lot of people don't talk about this, but he was the RB9 in total fantasy points, and he was tied for the 3rd most rushing touchdowns in the NFL with Alvin Kamara. 3rd most. That was only behind Derrick Henry and Kyron Williams. He was well on his way to a huge year, but these nagging injuries to his knee, hamstring, ankle absolutely derailed his season. He clearly wasn't fully healthy. Even when he returned, he was in and out, and he just wasn't the same guy after getting hurt. He still scored 8 rushing touchdowns on the year. I think this is a better player than people give him credit for. He's on a good offense in Washington, an improved offensive line. We know running quarterbacks help open up lanes for the running back. We saw it with Lamar, Derrick Henry last year. They also added Laramie Tunsil to bolster that offensive line. B-Rob's situation kind of reminds me of Raheem Mostert a couple years ago when he had, I believe, 18 rushing touchdowns. He's a guy who is an above-average talent, but his situation on a really good offense could lead to a ton of production. He's a guy that cannot be ignored, and I don't think we've seen what he's truly capable of yet. He's been injured. His rookie year was really rough as well, but if he can stay fully healthy, I think B-Rob could absolutely explode this year, kind of like a Chuba Hubbard, right? We're not expecting him to do much, but if he can stay on the football field, I think he could be really good in fantasy this year. And he's entering his final year of his contract. Most players who are entering their final year, when a lot of money's on the line, they're highly motivated. He's still only 26 years old. He's at RB29 in drafts right now, round 8, round 9 pick. You can maybe get him even in round 10, which is incredible to be able to get the starting running back on a good offense that late in drafts. I think that anytime you get that opportunity to do so, you take advantage of it. And B-Rob, again, not a guy who's a flashy pick, but he's a guy who could absolutely go crazy this year in 2025. I really like B-Rob. I think he's a better player than what we've seen from him so far. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.